Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Intrepid Investor Podcast with your host, Vanessa the Investor. Today was an incredible day for the Gold Coast. We just had another announcement that another major project is set to happen here on the Gold Coast. This gives so much more confidence to the people that already live here, already have property here, and the investors that have invested their time and money on the Gold Coast. Because obviously, where the government puts money is where they're seeing growth, is where they want more growth. And what growth brings is more opportunity for people that live here and for investors alike. A few hours ago, actually, the Crisafulli government just announced that they are going to do another extension to the light rail. Now, it's not the extension that you think if you've been following the Gold Coast infrastructure projects. One of the extensions that was proposed was to go from Burleigh down to the Gold Coast airport. However, that got axed due to political reasons and is no longer going forward. It was meant to be done before the Olympics. Instead, they have now proposed that they're going to go forward with another extension, which actually takes us in a different direction. It's going to connect the Gold Coast University Hospital to Harbour Town, which is in Bigara Waters. These areas in Bigara Waters, Labrador, Southport, they only have connections with buses. There is the tram line that runs through Southport, but it doesn't go any further out than that. So this is going to be a first to connect those suburbs that are on the northern end of the Gold Coast, the northern eastern part of the Gold Coast, to the rest of the Gold Coast. And I went to the Transport Forum, the Gold Coast Transport Forum a few weeks ago, and they didn't mention this project as something coming up. But what they did mention is that one of the biggest things right now that the Gold Coast needs is connectivity. And that's because of its growth, of the supply that is currently going in the Gold Coast for properties. You are building hundreds of apartments daily. There are over 70 cranes up in the Gold Coast right now. 70. More than 70 just putting up works, putting up apartment blocks and getting more people to live in the Gold Coast. So how are these people going to get around? And so that's where these public transport initiatives come in, because guaranteed there is not one car space for every single apartment. And guaranteed there are more than 2 cars owned in each apartment. And there's not enough parking, that's for sure. So we need to find ways as a city to improve our connectivity, to still be able to go and see the different parts of the Gold Coast, to go to the shops, to enjoy the different areas, but without getting into peak hour traffic all day, every day. And so that's what connectivity, that's what the public transport is all about. It's about creating that, making basically the distances a lot shorter and making it easier for people to get to places. Now, the reason that they're connecting to Harbour Town, well, obviously the shopping centre is one of that. But it's also to connect these suburbs. You've got your Labrador, Bigara Waters, we're getting closer to Runaway Bay. These suburbs have all just been connecting with buses, and now you're going to have an opportunity for a light rail, which is very exciting. And Harbour Town's great. It's almost like I call it like the DFO in Miami vibe, where you've got outdoor shopping centre with discount shops all over the place. Really great. So it'll be approximately 4 kilometres long and going down one single road. So going down Olsen Avenue is what they're proposing. And apparently there's going to be 3 stations. So that's really going to give us that connectivity for the suburbs in between Harbour Town and the Gold Coast University Hospital. What significance does this have to the property industry? Well, if we go back to stage 1, so the Gold Coast Light Rail was split into 3 stages. You have stage 1, which was Broadbeach South to Gold Coast University Hospital. Stage 2, which was Gold Coast University Hospital to Helensvale, which is where it connects onto the train service to get to Brisbane. And now stage 3 is Broadbeach South Station, outside of Pacific Fair Shopping Centre, to Burleigh, which is a new hub in itself. So when stage 1 was announced that it was going to start, there was early planning, but there wasn't funding yet. And that happened around the late 90s to early 2000s. So quite a while ago. And you could see that things were starting to shift. Mindsets were starting to shift and properties were starting to grow in a different way. Apparently, according to the Griffith University study, which they did for 20 years during this period, they found that the sweet spot, which is that 100 meters to 400 meters around where the light rail was proposed to go, the corridor along the Gold Coast Highway, rose 11%. Now, the average in Australia is 6. So you can see there is a little bit of a change there. And at that time, in the late 90s to early 2000s, it's not as if we had a mass migration coming into Gold Coast. There wasn't really any other factor that could attribute the growth of property. Then the feasibility study was completed. So this is when, okay, they've done the plan. How much is it going to cost? What's it going to be what's it going to mean for the environment, for the connections, for the community, all of those things. And basically when that was completed in 2002 to 2006, there was a 26% uplift in that area around the light rail corridor. 26%. That is the single biggest jump of the whole timeline, of the whole time that the light rail was being thought about, constructed, and then operated. That's the time that it jumped the most. And they saw the same thing happen with stage 2 as well. For some reason, that feasibility time, which is really when the government is saying, yeah, we're going to go forward with this, but they haven't started getting the right contractors and design in. Nothing's actually set in stone 1000%, but they have basically said, yeah, we're going to do this, kind of like in the phase that we are now. That's when properties really jumped up because investors would have seen this as, oh, wow, this is an opportunity. This means the government trusts that anything along this corridor is going to be worthy. This means that I'm going to be able to put my rents up more because I have an exact connection, I have an efficient connection into the rest of the Gold Coast without my tenants needing a car. And that is huge because not everyone can afford a car, not everyone wants a car. They just don't need one if they're just going to work and back. They're also finding in the Griffith University study, they also found that properties within 800 meters of the station gained 30% more than the rest of the Gold Coast. So it's sort of like that 800 meter radius around the corridor that you see real growth. And like I said, that real growth area is where you find the investors get in. And it is right now, the time now that we are in now, which is the feasibility phase, that this growth happens the most. So if you already have property in Labrador, Bigara Waters, Arundel, great. You're going to see an even more increase in the prices of your properties. They're going to go up even more than they already have. And which is quite funny actually, because I've actually bought a lot of properties for my clients in these areas, and I've bought property in these areas as well. And basically what's happened is in the last 6 months, we have seen, well, actually now in the last almost a year, we have seen huge gains. A client that I had bought a property in Labrador in November last year, and in April this year, it had grown $120,000. That's less than 6 months. So now it's grown even more. And with this announcement, it's going to grow even more. And this is a townhouse, and they bought it for less than $800,000. So the value is there. You can see it. So if you're skeptical about the Gold Coast, I would definitely rethink about these areas where this type of transport is going in. Now, it doesn't mean that every single house and every single unit and every single apartment and every single townhouse is going to work in these areas. No, that's not what it means. What it means is if you can strategically look at what type of property is out there in those areas that are in close vicinity to this corridor, then you should definitely take advantage of where that's at right now and see what opportunities may come about, because this is the phase that you have that 20% growth that stage 1 had. within that 400 meters from the corridor. I'm not telling you what to do, but I am just giving you that extra little boost of where should I be looking for my next investment property. It could be in one of these 3 suburbs. You also have the Coomera Connector, which is closer to Arundel, and that one is still under construction as well, and that is a roads project. So there's a lot of connectivity happening around these areas that weren't really that well known, that were considered the lower socioeconomic side of the Gold Coast. In fact, Labrador used to be known as Stabrador, and now it's getting a light rail through it. Incredible. But the government sees value. It sees that these suburbs are growing. It sees that these suburbs need more and the people from it need more. But my main point here is that you don't wait until the infrastructure project, until the construction is complete. The main growth happens now in this phase once an announcement is made. That is when the main growth, because it's the idea of it. It's I'm thinking about it. During construction, might actually go down a little bit. Not going to lie. Because you're going to get a lot of noise, your tenants are going to be complaining, and it's not going to be really ideal for someone to buy, especially if they're a young family. They're not going to want that excessive construction noise. But it's a little bit of a short-term pain for a longer-term gain. You get that growth phase at the start, shrinks a little bit, and then it continues after. Some of the suburbs that I actually mentioned are in my top 5 suburbs to invest in Southeast Queensland for under 1 million. And this is based on my clients' results and my results with investing in property. Now, if you want to get your hands on that copy, I will put the link in the show notes below, and you can have access to it and see what other suburbs are on there, because there is more growth to be had in other areas of Southeast Queensland with the Olympics and all the other infrastructure projects that are going along for the Olympics. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and family that are looking for the next investment place. This is the time to buy in these areas. And I'm not saying that because I've got a crystal ball, because I know any more than any of you guys. It's because we've seen it happen in this area, in the Gold Coast, with other stages of the same project. So, sometimes history can repeat itself, and property is always going to be a little bit of a gamble. But we have an example in history that is almost identical to this that we could potentially learn from for the better. Make sure to subscribe and like my podcast, The Intrepid Investor, so that I can continue giving you some awesome information and help you on your property and investment journey. Until next time, keep being intrepid investors. Bye for now.